Okay, so good morning. I'm going to be talking through the building of the foundation for an enterprise data hub within Dentsu International. So just to introduce myself, my name is Jerome O'Leary. I'm the Director of Enterprise Integration within Dentsu. I've been with the organisation about 2.5 years now, and my role is to manage what is an internal data platform that covers integration, master data management, and transactional data. And this is mainly for business intelligence and analytic functions. So this is a capability that's been built up from scratch over the last probably 1.5 to 2 years. And it's delivered significant benefits and a set of core capabilities for Dentsu globally. So prior to working in the media sector, I've actually mainly worked in the finance services within roles like lead architecture, as well as consultancy for e-com payments in tier one banks. And prior to that, I had an entirely different career where I worked in geographical information systems, delivering mapping solutions into the transport, insurance, and telco sectors. So just to introduce Dentsu International as an organization, it's a large multinational media and digital marketing communications company. It's grown over the years, mainly through mergers and acquisitions, and it's taken on tens, if not hundreds, of smaller companies and smaller brands. So it's now a very complex organization that is essentially this collection of smaller companies that acted independently in the past. So each of these brands has its own set of systems, its own data, and its own internal processes. So Dentsu is one of the largest media buying companies, and it currently operates in around 150 different countries and employs somewhere in a region of 50,000 employees. So where we're at today, Dentsu International has hundreds of different systems. So the media systems alone that provide the ability to plan and buy media and organize media campaigns exist by channel in different markets. There are hundreds of these. People systems, pretty much one per brand. Sales instances, Salesforce is the standard, but again, in each market it's different. Finance platforms vary. We have timesheets, we have project management systems, and a plethora of other IT applications and local systems. So this leaves us with a very disparate set of siloed data. Data exists in many ways duplicated in global systems, in regional systems, and local systems. So the overall goal within global technology is to support Dentsu in its delivery of global media services. And in order to do that, we've identified and recognized the need for centralizing data, mastering data, looking at putting in cleansing and deduplication processes, putting in governance and stewardship, and engaging throughout the entire organization to make sure we're optimizing business processes in the right way. So let's have a look at some of the challenges we identified to start with and how we got through to our solution definition. So joining up different parts of the organization was one of the key challenges. So brands operated independently, but they needed to share data. So this was often solved with point-to-point integrations using different technologies. And there's probably an example of each and every integration technology that exists somewhere in the organization. This was usually delivered with just a pure project focus. What do we need to get through this project? It gets delivered, and that's the end of it. In terms of consolidating and standardizing data for functions like global reporting, this was incredibly difficult. The global reporting team had to manually extract data from a variety of different systems. They'd have to wrangle that data into a format that they needed it before they could start building out their reports. Master data management was, again, very localized, and there wasn't a concept of mastering data at the global level for things like client lists or vendor lists and some of the other standard domains. Analytics and data science was in its infancy, really, mainly due to the barrier to entry for access to data. So there was a need here to look at integration solutions that we could centralize So in terms of requirements, we were looking for something very flexible. So something that would allow us to integrate against this huge background of systems, something that was easy to use with a low barrier to entry. We didn't want a team of incredibly specialized people. We wanted people that could get up and running fairly quickly. So, basic IT skills, basic SQL skills should be enough to get people up and effective. We wanted something that we called, an all-you-can-eat model. We literally didn't know how much data or how many integrations we'd need to build. So we didn't want to be limited by licensing around number of integrations or data. A quick startup time and ability to deliver at pace was key, as well as support and consultancy. So we wanted to make sure we had a vendor that we could partner with to get us up and running very quickly, and we could call off consultancy days to effect that. So in terms of the solution, we started where every person does, I guess, Googling different vendors and having a look to see what was out there in the market. We also partner with Gartner, so we had Gartner licenses. So we spent time talking to the analysts around the different offerings and what might be a good fit for Dentsu. So we narrowed this down to 4 vendors and started a formal RFP process. The RFP was split into separate lots. We were looking at an iPaaS, a master data management solution, and an API gateway at the time. So we separated these 3 products out, and we were quite keen to have strong players in each of those rather than a single player that fitted across all of those. So this was in order to have a more decoupled architecture that was felt it would give us flexibility in the future. So we narrowed these down to single vendors in each space, went through the appropriate commercial negotiations to final decision and contract. And we started our partnership with SnapLogic, which I'll go through in the next few slides. So in terms of use cases, I've touched on some of these already, but initially it was point-to-point integrations, things like connecting regional instances of CRMs and Salesforce up to our global instance. So just passing through things like clients and opportunities. We had a program of work around client profitability. In order for that reporting to be successful, they required data from 60+ timesheet systems. So we set about tackling connectivity and pulling out all of this timesheet data, standardizing it and making it available for that reporting function, along with other finance information. HR analytics was another global function that was struggling to get its data into a consistent format. So we targeted systems like Workday, as well as other external systems to provide that centralized data to them. We set about a master data management program, looking at all of the key domains that needed to be mastered, identifying the systems that held that data, and starting that analysis and discovery. Right now, we're working on something called integrated ERP, and this is really starting to wire up all of our global platforms so they can communicate and share data. Integration and master data management are absolutely at the heart of enabling that program. So in terms of our core global systems, when we look at finance, we're focused on Dynamics D365. When we look at projects, we're looking at Workfront. We've standardized on Salesforce, as you'd probably expect, for our CRM, Workday for our HR system. When it comes to timesheets, it's still pretty much one per country. But again, we're trying to standardize those down as we go and just rationalize systems. Media platforms are very legacy, very difficult to connect to. But again, we're implementing things like SFTP, file transfer, until we can get better connection into those platforms. Vendor management, we have Cooper as our global standard. So the way we organized ourselves for delivery against what was an increasingly large workload, we started off with a lead data engineer who was based onshore, and we established a core team offshore. In this case, it was in South Africa, where we had an additional set of 5 to 6 SnapLogic developers. That was pretty successful. We built up our backlogs and started to deliver against that. Now I have an additional isolated team that's focused purely on the media systems because they are so vast. So the internal team carries on with all of our current work, but we have a separate team that's looking at the external media systems. We're also starting to federate access to key markets where we can get people trained and onboarded to start to deliver against their own backlogs. So some of the innovation spaces we're looking at as well. I'll touch on it in a second, but business process management is a bit of a hot topic at the moment. Once you can connect to systems, that's great, but how do we start to orchestrate activity across those systems? And how do we start to build out workflow such that we're tying in some of the front-end applications with the back-end systems of record? We're also looking at interaction with local robotics processes, RPA, where we can't integrate with systems. We're looking to write information or scrape it via the front-end UIs. We're also using SnapLogic for things like data administration policies, mainly because it's easy. We can implement it there. So we can tidy up the data lakes. We can implement policies like data protection, so the right to be forgotten. We can remove people's names. And we're also using SnapLogic pipelines for reporting out to Confluence for things like a data catalog, etc. Okay, so this brings us to, I guess, the topic, which is about the Enterprise Data Hub. So in its early view, it looked a bit like this, with a firm BI focus. So if I start from the bottom, you can see there's a set of source systems, of which hundreds exist out there. So we brought on SnapLogic to connect to these. So once we had all of those connections in place, we started to land the data in a data lake. And this centralization function was organized in such a way that we had a timesheet storage account, a sales storage account, a people storage account, finance, media, etc. And we created containers per system within each of those storage accounts to land data in a chronological order. We also introduced the concept of a file landing zone where people could manually upload data, or a system could write a file into that landing zone that would then be picked up and moved into the appropriate storage account. So once we had all the data in a data lake, we then set about the activity of standardizing it such that we were pushing data into an enterprise data warehouse into data marts. So where we had 60 timesheet systems, we standardized those down into a common timesheet data mart, which could then be picked up and used by some of the business use cases like client profitability. So the data lake underpins all of the reporting effort upstream in the data warehouse. The business then plugs in either Tableau or Power BI to build out their reports on top of that. On the right-hand side, we also have master data management. So where we're pushing transactional data into a lake, we're pushing master data into our MDM solution, which is SemaKey, and we're putting in the processes and controls around there to manage and govern the data, which is also made available via an API or published into our central data warehouse. So all of the infrastructure for this is managed by our DevOps teams and supported by SRE, our site reliability engineers. Okay, we have sort of moved on slightly from the original Data Hub view, and the new, or sort of Mark II, if you like, of the Enterprise Data Hub incorporates some different components. So the view was now that we want to move towards more event-based integration, and we want to put in the capabilities for business process management. So we've included the likes of Kafka and Camunda to manage workflow. But yet again, we're using SnapLogic as the method of tying up the back-end systems with Kafka, and also tying up Kafka events to front-end systems, for example, our media ecosystem. And the media ecosystem is an externally facing client set of applications. So the business process management piece is another user interface. So the idea is now that we build out an enterprise data hub user interface in its own right. So there's a landing page to get access to what was headless. It now has a head and a face indeed, where we can publish applications. So you would get access to Tableau, Power BI, SemaKey for MDM, Camunda for orchestration, as well as management applications that are needed within the enterprise data hub like certificate management, etc. So that's our long-term view that we're working on currently. Coming back to enabling the business and some of the benefits, goals, and enablers. So the benefits we've seen over the last couple of years is this fast time to deliver. It's quite quick now to get an integration up and running. As long as we have complete set of business requirements, we can deliver these in a pretty timely way, assuming we have the connectivity. It's also very agile. It's very easy to change those designs. We can iterate pipelines. We can work in a very agile way with various different development teams. It's also flexible. So we found pretty much for any use case we've applied SnapLogic to, we've been able to solve it. So wherever data is being moved around, we found a solution through the various different snaps and pipelines that we've built. So we've achieved our goals in many ways. We've delivered on our strategic vision. We've created our enterprise data hub. And this is very much underpinned with the ability to connect to and standardize data from all of these disparate systems. So in the first year, it took us about a month or so to get our first integration up and going. And since then, in the first year, we've now pushed 100 integrations through into production. So there's lots of business enablement that's been achieved through this process. And as I say, we've moved from a sort of we'll build it for you to we'll help you build it yourselves type attitude, where we're federating and enabling the rest of the business to onboard to the platform and start to build their own integrations. So it was mentioned earlier on Neil's talk about center of excellence. That's exactly what we're doing here. We're trying to create that center of excellence for integration, a center of excellence for master data, and also for workflow management. So it's all about enabling the business so that we don't become the bottlenecks for it. So finally, just to summarize, I guess, if you're looking for an iPaaS, what would we suggest? It's very much case by case, right? It depends on the organization you work within. I think what worked well for us was the fact that SnapLogic provided all of the connectors we needed. We knew we didn't have to buy anything in addition. It covered us with the enterprise snap packs available and the standard connectors. It was really important for us that we had this near unlimited capacity. We didn't want to be a charge per integration or per megabyte of data or any other slightly archaic model. We wanted a nice, simple user interface that people could get up and understand and build out integrations quickly. Something that was flow-based rather than form-based. We didn't like the form-based approach to integrations. And in terms of key takeaways, I guess, we started from nothing a couple of years ago. We've now set up a central center of excellence integration function. We've got a backlog of at least 200 integrations. We've delivered half of those within a year, and we're starting to push out that federation. And more importantly, SnapLogic is now seen as the strategic tool to be used within Dentsu for all movement of data between systems. Originally, this was just internally, but now it's for most of our external systems in the media landscape as well. So that brings me to an end. Thank you very much, and I'll hand back.